Hey guys, you've joined us live at Moneycontrol. I'm Manisha Gupta and we're talking about steel right now, where we have seen the prices choppy. It's coming off its highs right now. But the important point to discuss is that the Indian demand growth story still continues to be positive, and the street does believe that every time it's pre-elections or election time, there is this pre-spending that we see on construction, on highways, etc., and that also leads to more demand coming across. But let's get all of those points in focus, and joining us now is Dhruv Goel from Steelmint. Dhruv, hi, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, on the demand side itself, and Steelmint did come out with a report suggesting that we are looking at a strong demand growth story until 2030. How do you see those numbers? Where do you see demand coming in from?
Hi, Manisha. If you talk about demand from a longer perspective, I think everybody is bullish. All the steel mills as well as the consumer end, be it construction sector, be it infra, be it auto. We expect that numbers will increase and that will drive the steel demand. To just give a set of context, currently India's demand is at around 120 million ton, and this is expected to be around 190 million ton by 2030, wherein the majority of demand would come from infra and construction sector.
Dhruv, also, it usually is a trend that you see some commodity prices and demand increase pre-elections. Are we looking at a similar trend when it comes to steel?
Yes, you're right. It generally happens, before election, government tries to spend and they have their commitment to meet. So they're spending. In all the commodities, not only steel, other commodities also we see uptick in demand. But at the same time, when just before the election and when the code of conduct is implemented or imposed, so we see we see a tapering down of demand, which we have seen wherein this election has happened in 5 states. So currently there's some bit of pull down in the demand, but overall the long term and the mid term growth story looks quite positive for India.
So while we have spoken on the demand side of it, Dhruv, what's your sense on the production side of it? How do you see those numbers stacking up as we go ahead?
Production this month, in the month of October, India produced around 12 million ton, which is an all-time high, and we expect that the production is likely to remain intact. And this year we are expecting production to be anywhere between 138 to 140 million ton, which will be higher by around 10% from the last financial year.
And do you see this kind of a growth story continue in sense of production as well?
I think yes, the growth story will continue.
How would you look at the Indian demand growth? I mean, we've seen year on year continue to be on a stronger side. I mean, if last year was anywhere between 11 to 13%, the expectation, as you also put out, is anywhere between 10 to 12% going forward as well. Is this sustainable? How do you look at the anti-dumping duties that India seems to be putting on some of the Chinese products as well? How do you look at those measures?
So first, if we talk about the demand, as we say, all the sectors are expected to do well, and this will drive steel consumption. So we are quite confident that demand will remain. And although 10-11% could be a little higher side, but on the conservative side, I think it will be anywhere between 7 to 8 to 8.5% in the longer term. Coming to the second point on anti-dumping on Chinese products, so we have not seen any direct decision or any notice being issued by government directly on the Chinese imports. But as we discussed in the last call, that there are some indirect measures being taken by government, like the BIS licenses are getting more stricter and it is taking time to renew these licenses. So these are all non-trade measures which government is taking to control the imports.
Okay, noted that. I also want to talk to you about the prices part of it. We have seen very volatile international prices. From the recent highs, we've seen some prices come off. China has been making or warning about hoarding and speculating activities. We've seen iron ore prices come off, steel prices come off as well. How is that any impact of that in the Indian markets, and how have you seen the Indian price trajectory?
I think since steel is a global commodity, and India is not immune to this kind of volatility in directly or indirectly. So we have seen the same impact on Indian prices. The steel prices have corrected around 10 to 12% in last 1 month, and currently they are operating at around 4 months low. But yeah, if you see any other part of the world, India is fairly doing better.
And how do you see the prices going forward from here?
At the moment looks a little difficult. I think we expect that margins will be, since the prices have come down and the raw material prices have gone up, and generally your December onwards, India see a peak season, a better season for steel demand. So we do not see a lot of price correction from here.
All right. And how do you see the margins when it comes to Indian companies? I mean, as you said, we are looking at the raw material prices higher, steel prices in the meanwhile have corrected. What does it really imply?
So relatively the margins will be lower compared to Q2. Probably I do not have the numbers exact that what would be the margin numbers for Q3, but definitely it will be lower compared to Q2.
All right. Dhruv, as always, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, you are bang on all the answers and very sportingly taking them all as well. So that's all the numbers coming in from the company there, as Dhruv tells us that the demand is looking quite strong, prices not as much. The demand growth, especially going forward, is expected to remain on the higher side, especially when you look at the pre-elections time there, and all of that seems quite supportive for the sector.